Mihir, hello.
Hello.
Like the live streaming has started on YouTube, but just check like from another device if the thing is audible or not. Why can't I see him?
It's a 30-second buffer, so wherever you are, just wait 30 seconds.
But I cannot see his video.
You'll have to focus it, I think. Are you sure it's the same link? I'm not seeing the. It's showing me the old thing.
I'm sending you the link. Check once.
Mm-hmm.
It might have changed. I don't know. It's
Because
a
if the
new
link has changed, then that's weird.
link. I think it has changed.
Yep, link changed.
Shit.
Damn it, I have to do so much. I think we're ready on our end. मैं डिस्कॉर्ड से निकल जाता हूँ.
আরে দাদা এখন কাজ করছে এখন কথা বলতে পারবে না কাজ করছে কাজ করছে কিনা জানি না। দাদা আমি তো মেল পাঠিয়ে অ্যাপটা ইনস্টল করেছি।
তুই এখন ডিস্টার্ব করিস না আমাকে।
আমাকে এখন নোটগুলো লিখতে হবে আর ম্যাম ওয়ার্ড ফাইল অন্বেষণের বাবা তুই লিখছিল অন্বেষণের বাবা তুই পরিষণের বাবা তুমি না না তুমি লেখাপড়া করে কেন করছো পড়া শেখাচ্ছে না একদিন আর কে কোথায় কি কথা বলছে কি নড়ছে কি জানলে তো কে বন্ধ করলো এরকম কেন আচ্ছা দাদা তুমি জানলা বন্ধ করতে হবে আরে ঠিক আছে আলো জ্বালাবার জন্য না জানলাটা বন্ধ করলি কেন অন্যদিকে তো নজর হয়ে গেছে না আমি কি তোকে নিয়ে
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I hope now we can start now. Are you okay? Yes. So we're starting now. Book Club of IISER Bhopal welcomes you all to Myth and Sight, an association with Fine Arts and Literary Council. My name is Madhuri Sonwal, and I'll be your host for this afternoon talk with our two guests. Our talk is around all things mythology and what it takes to write a myth-derived fiction story. So let me introduce you to our first guest, who is Mr. Tanmoy Bhattacharjee. Mr. Tanmoy is Mr. Tanmoy is a researcher by work and a writer by passion, and he will be talking about his upcoming book and more. We also have our second guest, who is Vedant Phophale, also known as Mythwala. He is an industry expert on all things mythology, especially the Indian mythos. About our first speaker, Mr. Tanmoy, he started his journey of writing with Times Right India contest in 2015, and where he wrote a small beginning about a young girl in 17th century Maharashtra. It was one of the winners of the competition, and in 2016, while working on his PhD thesis, he wrote his first novel, That of a Monk. This mystery novel was later shelved for further improvements. After coming to New Zealand in 2018, he started working on an apocalyptic novel, which was, yes, appropriately named Binash, and it is still under development. Like Mahabharata 2022 was his first novel to be published, and it was written in 2020. Yes, it was during the span of 6 months in which we were undergoing the COVID-19 lockdown, and it was in full force in New Zealand too. Now, talking about this book is accepted by Yukioto for publication and will be soon hitting the stores all over the world. However, his literary expeditions does not end here. He is currently working on a techno-thriller trilogy series called The City Below. So I invite Mr. Tanmoy to grace us and to talk about his upcoming book, Mahabharata 2022. Mr. Tanmoy, you may unmute and address the viewers.
Thank you very much. I'll start my presentation and is the presentation visible? Because I can't say anything.
No, sir.
No, it's not visible.
Okay. So share. Okay. And now.
Yeah, you are presenting.
Perfect. All right. So thank you for inviting me and thank you for that excellent introduction. I have titled the talk Mythology Now, although the name of my book is slightly different. That is because I want to talk about other things rather than just the book. And so that's why the name of the presentation is slightly different. Now, the question is, why Mythology Now? It is because my book is about the mythology story, that is the epic Mahabharata, happening in the present day. And then there are several questions like, why do we want the already perfect story of Mahabharata in present day? My answer is this. So what is happening is all these mythology stories are being used nowadays. There are lots of courses which teach management problems, problem solving, personal development, and all other such issues using the stories in Mahabharata. So I always thought that there is a slight disconnect because those stories happened thousands of years ago, whereas the culture, the technology, the context, and legal and other framework has changed. So I thought maybe if we can present the story in present day with the present problems and present context, maybe we will be able to relate the book in a better way. So there was an option to write a non-fiction kind of story, like retelling the Mahabharata, but in a present context. But I thought it might be more interesting to write a fiction book. And so that's how Mahabharata 2022, and that's how Mythology Now. Now, I have structured the talk. It's a 20-minute talk, not too long. I will be talking first about my background, influence, and journey. And then I will be talking briefly about what the novel is about and the characters. So about me, as the host has already said, I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Otago. And very briefly, what I'm working on. So first thing I'm working on is an ultrasound device for oral cancer and oral disease diagnostics. The first one, which is already undeveloped, is if a patient comes to a dentist and the dentist can say, okay, if the gum is fine, is there any treatment required? So it's more of a gum disease diagnostic device. But I was keen to take it into oral cancer because most of my training is in cancer. So that's the second work that I'm doing, is trying to develop a contrast agent that will be able to do some diagnostics. That is, the same patient comes to the dentist and says, I have a lesion, I'm worried. The dentist will be able to put him at ease. And the third is also similar. It's more of spectroscopy kind of thing. A patient analysis, what drugs should be used, what's the chances of developing cancer, so on and so forth. So that's all I'm going to talk about science today, but you are welcome to email me if you want to know more about the science part. Now, next is science and fiction. Now, this is something interesting that I have been asked by my students, by my colleagues, and by my professors, is science and fiction. How do you do, why do you do both of them? What it's not connected. And the biggest question is, like, science is about facts, whereas fiction is complete opposite of facts. So why science and fiction? So my answer usually is science is about creativity, and creativity knows no bounds. You see, like any other field, in science, you have to be creative. You have to write new projects, come up with new ideas, discuss and innovate. So it's not something that is new. Creativity is part of science. And creativity, you cannot box it. You cannot put it like, okay, I can be creative only in science and nothing else. So the people who did PhD with me, all of them were talented singers, dancers, poets, writers, and musicians, and many, many creative arts. And I honestly think that it is because they are creative in all these fields, they are great scientists. So I think that creativity and science cannot be separated. And then the question comes, why fiction? Well, because fiction today is commonplace tomorrow. Around 1840s, Jules Verne dreamt up this device called as submarine. He called it Nautilus. And nowadays, submarine is very common. So I think fiction is more of a guide. It's what we imagine or how we want our world to be. And it's a guide to science of what should be worked on, what direction do we want to go. There are so many directions in which you can go, but which one should we follow? And I think broad fiction imagination of our future is something that we should work towards. And that's, I think, so science and fiction are very much connected. And when I'm talking about creativity and fiction, you need inspiration, you need influences. You cannot be in isolation and write up fiction. You have to have influences, something that connects to you, something that you want to write about. And so these are some of my biggest inspirations. First is Vedant Phophale. So his work on Mahabharata, that is called Jaya, is one of the best Mahabharata retellings that I have read. It helps me relate to those old times. It connects to me, even though that stories happened many years ago. He has put it in a way which we can understand even now. Next is my all-time favorite author, Agatha Christie. I love mysteries. I love situations where there is a group of people who have accumulated at a place and there is a murder and people have to find it out. And she is the master of mystery. So she is my all-time favorite author. Then there is Terry Pratchett. He is funny. His work is satirical and comedic. And that's why I really love his work. He is very innovative. He has created an entire world, but it is still very much based on existing scientific technology. And the way he presents his work is just amazing. Next is Jonathan Stroud. He also is a very innovative guy, but he writes more like of the cities that we know, not like a different world altogether, but the cities that we already know, but it's an alternate universe. The rules of physics, chemistry are different and biology is different. So that's another. And finally, of course, Amish Tripathi. He is the person who, according to me, started the trend of taking our ancient stories and putting it in a new way and making it very readable and very interesting. And my work is pretty much similar to what he has done, taking a well-known story, putting it in a different way, and then presenting it. All right, so the host has already talked about my journey, but I want to go over it again, but in the forms of difficulties and my failures. How tough was it to get here? So just briefly, I did my graduation near Mumbai and then went on to do my post-graduation in Mumbai itself. And then Navi Mumbai, I did my PhD, went to Brazil for my first postdoc, and right now I'm doing my second postdoc in New Zealand. So I have been writing stories right from my school days, and I never could write more than 20 or 25 pages. And I always thought, it's very simple. The authors write 20, 30 pages, They give it to the publishers make it 300, 400 pages, and that's how publishing works. Of course, I was in school, I didn't know, but as I went to college, I realized, no, the authors have to write their own stories. Nobody helps them. So my biggest challenge was to write a long book. And in college, that was my first thing, first full-length novel. I say full length, it was just a 80-page in a small notebook. So it's not really full length, but it was full length for me because I could never write beyond 20. And then when I went to post-graduation, I wrote my second to fourth. These were not publishable. These are very childish, amateurish stories. But the good thing is that I kept increasing the length of my novel. And then finally, when I was finishing my PhD, I won the short story contest, Times Write India contest, and that gave me some confidence. I went on to write my fifth novel. It was long. And when I say long, not in comparison to today's novel, it was long compared to what I had wrote, around 60,000 words, which is around 220 pages, good enough. But of course, it's got rejected many, many, many times. Then one literary agent showed interest in it, and she read the book and she suggested some corrections. And I wanted to do it, but I had to go to Brazil at that time. I was in the middle of the move, and I just couldn't find time to get it done. And then it was too late. In Brazil, I didn't have any time for fiction writing. I wrote mostly technical books and scientific articles. But when I came to New Zealand, well, first year I spent going all over New Zealand with my friends. But after they left, I had a lot of times during the weekend. And so I wrote my 6th to 11th novels. I got lots of rejections, and I was thinking, what is the problem? Why am I not being able to get published? And then I read a lot of things, and I realized that, for a new author, that person has to write something really, really new. If it is not new, as a first author, there's no chance. So what new could I write? And so I came up with the idea of writing a modern version of Mahabharata. There will be the heroes from Mahabharata, there will be concepts from Mahabharata, but these heroes do not have any special superpowers or anything. They are regular humans. They are facing the same problems that they faced during the first Mahabharata, but they have to solve it in the present context, under the limitations of law, order, and current technology. Now, this book almost immediately got interest from one publishers, but there was some scheduling conflict, so I couldn't publish with them. And then it was accepted by 2 traditional publishers, which was a big deal because 2 traditional publishers accepted it. And finally, I went ahead to publish with Ukiyoto because they were the first to offer me a contract. So now I will talk about my modern Mahabharata novel, which is Mahabharata 2022. It is an epic reimagined in present day. It is not the same story. It is not a retelling. It's a reimagining. The reason I have to reimagine because it's modern Mumbai. Things have changed. So it doesn't make sense to tell the whole story, the same story again. So I had to reimagine the book. So the novel starts in Mumbai, in Bandra, and 7 level down. This is not a real club. This is something I made up. And in this club, Abhimanyu is pleading with Duryodhana's son. So you see, in this book, the Pandavas and Kauravas are fighting over a business empire. There is a the country's richest business empire, and they are both trying to get hold of it. So now Abhimanyu and Duryodhana's son, Abhimanyu is telling Duryodhana's son, look, we are the next generation. We don't have to keep fighting. We should be together. We should run our company together. There are so many competitors to us. If we keep fighting, we will lose out. So he is pleading, but all of a sudden, he removes a syringe from his pocket and injects himself and dies right in the club. Now, obviously, Arjun is heartbroken because of his son's death, and he immediately blames Duryodhana and the Kauravas and vows revenge. And that kicks off a brutal revenge and retaliation events. So Duryodhan's son is nearly beaten to death. Bhim's son is shot. Shakuni is injured in an attack. A bomb completely destroys Arjun's office. Now, you see, while the violence is going on, the public gets affected because of that. It's the public who has to suffer many of the consequences. And they start protesting the violence. They don't want this kind of violence affecting them. And the protests themselves turn violent, and riots erupt all over the city, and the city literally starts burning everywhere. And in the middle of all this, the two heroes, that's Radha and Krishna, they continue to go after the truth. They have to find the truth. What happened to Abhimanyu? Why did he inject himself? Why did he die? Because that's the only way to stop the war. But the question is, will they be able to find the truth? Because the Pandavas and Kauravas have started fighting, and it has become more and more and more violent, and they have started literally wiping each other out. So that's the story that Mahabharata 2022 will tell. I briefly want to talk about the characters here. The hero is the main protagonist of this book is Radha. She is the assistant superintendent of police, and she had to struggle a lot in life. She is from lower middle class family, had to, did not have the financial capability to go for, educational aids, coaching, buying books and stuff. She had to work very hard, and she failed many, many times. And while she was struggling, she saw many people who, just because they have money, they could just sail through all these problems and never have and go to reach higher positions without any problem. And because of this, because of her struggles and this seeing that the privileged people get all the facilities, she absolutely hates the rich people, absolutely fully hates rich people. But that's a problem because she is asked to investigate Abhimanyu's death. Abhimanyu is the richest person in the country. So she just doesn't want to investigate. And that's where the next character, which is Krishna, he is an intelligence bureau guy. He is very hard to read, quirky, eccentric. And he convinces Radha that you must investigate the death. And Radha says, no, why should I? You are intelligence bureau guy, you do it. And Krishna says, no, I can't. All the people in this case are either my family or my friends. I am very biased. There has to be an unbiased investigation. And so he gives Radha all his support and asks her to investigate. Then there is Draupadi. She is a lawyer, and she is the toughest person in this book. Any business, big business gets lots of legal issues. And the Pandavas also suffer a lot of legal problems in this book. And the person who solves all these problems and who takes the lead is Draupadi. Using all her legal skills. Then there is Duryodhan. So he owns 30% of the business empire, which I call Asandivada. So his plan is to take over 100%. He is nice personally, but as a business person, he is ruthless. Next, there is Arjun. He controls 70% of the business, and he has no intention of giving anything to Duryodhan. And he's very vengeful. He doesn't like any kind of stain or slight on his honor. And if he thinks his honor is challenged, he will go after the person, no matter what. And finally, there's Eklavya. He is a detective. Now, because of some misunderstanding, he thinks Radha has committed a crime. And in the entire book, he chases Radha while Radha tries to solve the case. And Radha has to be really, really careful and smart because Eklavya is an excellent and persistent detective. And that's the characters, and that's the story of Mahabharata, the epic reimagined in modern Mumbai. Thank you. That's all I have in this presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Tanmoy. We were honored to hear about your literary milestones.
Thank you.
Yes, we will proceed to the next part of our event. That is an excerpt from the book Mahabharata 2022 will be read by Shatabdi Naik. Yeah.
Hi. Good morning. Mahabharata 2022, Chapter 11. Krishna drove the car swiftly through the traffic, ignoring a few yellow signals. He cleared the main road and ducked into a residential street. From there, he randomly took left and right turns before suddenly gunning back towards the main road. I don't see the cars anymore, said Radha. You have shaken the tail. Not entirely, said Krishna. They will find us pretty soon. I know how to get rid of them, said Radha, and tapped on the map. Go there. Why are you trying to get rid of my security? Asked Lakshman, his tone fearful. Lakshman, said Krishna, Radha has decided not to arrest you. She will take you to the police station and you can wait there till your people come to get you. But you have to follow Radha's instructions. This is the best I can do, and dropped the uncooperative attitude. Thank you, Krishna, said Lakshman in a polite voice, then continued with sincerity. I'm sorry, Radha. I was just scared. I did not behave very well either, said Radha, looking daggers at the grinning Krishna. Received bad news moments before we came to you. I'm sorry to hear that, said Lakshman. Please ask me the questions. I will answer as best as I can. In the club, what did you and Abhimanyu talk about? Asked Radha. Honestly, I was not paying any attention to him, said Lakshman. I was just too angry. I thought I had gotten past, well, something personal. But seeing him brought back all the hatred in a rush. I was overwhelmed, but the gist of what little I listened to was this. Abhimanyu wanted to bring the Pandava and the Kaurava families together. He was convinced that the Sandivata competitors and international companies were working to bring our company down. He said he had been examining records, documents, and accounts, and things didn't make sense. Did he tell you exactly what these documents or accounts were? Asked Krishna, barely able to disguise his intense interest. No, said Lakshman, but he wanted me to look into something of our business dealings and give him some data. He said an exchange of information was critical. What did you think about that? Asked Radha. I was not thinking about it at all, said Lakshman. Although now I wish I had to get a clue about his death. Not exactly, said Lakshman. You see, I had asked him about Vatsala, a good friend of mine.
School
I
বন্ধ
knew
কর না
they were dating, and that sort of
না,
made
এটা
me
এখন করিস
so
না।
angry because Vatsala is such a good friend of mine. Anyway, I shut him out. I wish I had listened because I cannot be sure and there is no way to verify. But I think he was saying that it was not working out between him and Vatsala. Yes, said Radha, begging him to reveal more. He believed that this competition between him and me regarding Vatsala was hindering us working together to give up. He thought I was more suitable for Vatsala. At least I tried making it all up because I wanted to hear that. So many good things happened in the club after the conversation that my memory is fuzzy. Though I'm sure in my mind that he said he was giving up his relationship with Vatsala. Did you discuss this with Vatsala? Asked Radha, pointing out a road sign to Krishna. I did not have a chance to speak to her after the incident. Yes, said Radha. Radha. What? No. I don't want Vatsala to come to me because about Abhimanyu's request for cooperation to save the corporation. Said, as Krishna searched for a parking spot in a crowded street. Oh, that. I never thought about it, said Lakshman. Krishna parked between a pan stall and an auto rickshaw and got out. Let's go, Radha said to Lakshman, who was frozen in his seat. Why are there so many people? He asked in a frank puzzlement. What is this place? This is the Kurla railway station, said Radha, glancing around to spot Lakshman's security men. Don't tell me you have never seen a railway station. Not with people in it, said Lakshman, shrinking back in his seat. Come on, said Radha, noticing a familiar car that braked suddenly. Experience the city. Think of it as an adventure. Lakshman stepped out of the car. Are we taking a train? He asked with suppressed excitement. I have never been on a local train. I have heard a lot about it, though. Yes, we are, said Krishna, placing a police sign so as to be visible through the windshield. Where is the train? Asked Lakshman with genuine interest. There, said Radha, pointing at the third platform and smiling despite herself. We have to take the bridge. Lakshman saw the bridge and took an instinctive step back. Excuse me, can I mute myself for just 2 seconds?
Yes, yeah, it's okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry for the disturbance.
Yeah, it's
Lakshman saw
okay.
the Lakshman saw the bridge and took an instinctive step back. He gazed at the mass of people in horrified fascination. How can we ever get into that? He asked. There is no space at all. Radha internally congratulated herself for bringing Lakshman at the perfect moment. It was the peak rush hour time of a Monday morning, and there were a minimum of 30,000 people waiting at the 8 platforms at that very moment. The 6 feet or less wide entrance to the foot over bridge that Lakshman was gawping at least 100 people trying to enter at a time, while another 300 or more were trying to exit it. Radha thought of giving Lakshman some time, but then she saw one of Lakshman's security guards point towards them. She positioned herself behind Lakshman and pushed him forward into the crowd, elbowing their way up. She received a blow or two, and was sure Lakshman had got some too, but once among the mob, they were automatically carried to the top of the stairs. Radha looked back and saw to her fascination the hefty security men struggling in vain at the base of the footover bridge stairs. Krishna threw a questioning look at her, and Radha pointed at the train indicator. A train was due within half a minute on platform number 5. Destination fixed, they jostled through the crowd, clutching Radha's arm as if his life depended on it. Lakshman somehow hung on beside her. And I thought was were a challenge, he muttered. Must be a special day, some festival. So many people out here. Everyday life of regular people, said Radha. People cannot be doing this every day, said Lakshman dismissively. It simply cannot be true. I went to college every day just like this, said Radha. This is why you could become a police officer, said Lakshman, nodding his head. Radha laughed out loud, but as usual, the crowd around her was too busy to take notice. Then, with a pang, she remembered that she may not have the job for long. Krishna stopped them and pointed downwards. They got themselves in front of the crowd again, and were carried downstairs with ease. Every inch of platform number 5 was occupied, but Radha knew that Thane train would not be crowded. In fact, it would be nearly empty. During morning hours, people traveled towards Mumbai, not the opposite direction. With a piercing whistle, the cream white purple color 12 coach local thundered into the platform. Radha helped the excited Lakshman climb on. As Krishna followed suit, two people got down, and the three had the coach to themselves. Lakshman ran to the window seat and sat down. He then got up and went to the door on the other side and peeked out. A man extended his hand towards him and he fell back in fright. Radha walked swiftly to the door, grabbed the hand, and pulled a tall, well built but scholarly looking 25-year-old with thick spectacles into the coach. He thanked her, took hold of the rod between the door, and hung out. There was another piercing whistle, and the train lurched into motion. A tall, muscular, giant like man rushed out of the bridge and began running alongside the door. As the train gathered speed, the man seized the door rod by a practiced motion and leaped in. He was wearing a hoodie and had a handkerchief tied over his face. He grunted and moved into the train. Krishna, who was gazing out of the door, suddenly gave a warning cry. Radha whipped around and saw the giant man bring his hand down on Lakshman's shoulder. The boy's knees collapsed and he fell on the floor, screaming. At the same time, the scholarly looking man stole up behind Krishna and pushed something into his back. Krishna convulsed violently and fell down. Radha kicked the giant, which didn't seem to have any effect on him, so she rushed him. The train increased its speed that very moment and both crashed to the ground. Radha was on her feet in an instant and ran towards the spectacled man, who was teasing Krishna again. She caught the man by his neck and pulled hard. They fell back. The giant was on his feet in the meantime and had lifted Lakshman by his hair. Radha punched Krishna's attacker hard on his back, snatched away his taser, pushed it into the giant's stomach, and pressed the button. He let go of Lakshman and swatted Radha away. She ducked, threw the taser to her other hand, and tased the giant in his thigh. As soon as he was down on one knee, Radha turned. The spectacled man raised a curved dagger and brought it down on Krishna's arm. It went right through. Radha pushed the giant with all her might, then cannoned into Krishna's attacker. The train slowed down almost to a halt, and before the two could recover, Krishna crawled towards the door and fell out onto the tracks. The train started again and gathered speed before the spectacled attacker could jump out. The giant rose and went straight for Lakshman. Radha barred his way, and for a few seconds they grappled
No,
with
no,
each
no.
other.
Anyway, he's a guy. पैसा तो नहीं है.
Soham, please mute yourself.
Oh God, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Mr. Tabji, you may continue.
The giant rose and went straight for Lakshman. Radha barred his way, and for a few seconds they grappled with each other. The other back. Radha quickly, because the giant possessed strength that Radha sharp nails to gouge out every exposed part of the giant's body. Roaring with pain, he threw a punch, which Radha evaded easily. The giant tittered, and Radha took advantage of the other's disbalance to kick his ankle. The giant crashed on the floor. The train came to a complete halt, and Radha realized to her dismay that the spectacled man had pulled the chain. Seizing Lakshman by his waist, she jumped out of the train after Krishna's attacker. The three rolled on the track next to the local. Even as an oncoming local whistle ferociously in warning. Radha threw Lakshman away and jumped. She felt the train lightly brush against her shoes, but she could catch her breath. She saw the spectacle man running headlong towards a prone figure not more than 10 feet away. She rushed after him, only to hear the heavy thud of the giant landing on the ground beside Lakshman. Krishna's attacker was not far from his victim, and the giant was easily blocking Lakshman's feeble punches. Radha picked up a stone from the trap and threw it hard. It knocked out the dagger from the spectacle man's hand. She threw another, and that hit him squarely on his head. The attacker slowed down. A massive engine came crashing down the track to their left, shaking them all off balance. A local train rattled by the tracks on the right, forcing them to lay flat between the tracks to avoid getting sucked in on either side. But even lying flat, the giant managed to pound Lakshman back mercilessly. Throwing caution to the air, Radha crawled forward, picked up another stone, raised it, and brought it down hard on the giant's chin. Blood flew everywhere, caught between the opposing forces of the train traveling in different directions. The giant lashed out in pain and caught Radha right on her chest. She flew back, her breathing stopped, and things began to go black. The pain of the fall on pointed stones revived her. As her vision cleared, she saw the spectacle man hold Krishna's head against the track as it vibrated, owing to the force of another approaching local. Radha tried to get up, but failed. In horror, she saw the engine of the train appear around the bend. She pushed with all her might and got to her knees. Something heavy rushed past her. The next instant, the giant was upon the spectacled attacker, raining blow after blow. Radha ran. The train braked hard. Krishna lay motionless. Radha leaped. The train's wheels sparked. She pulled hard. The train ran over Krishna's head. She leaned over him. He was not breathing. She brought her fist down hard on his chest. Nothing. She massaged his chest and then brought her fist down again hard. She held Krishna's jaws and forced them open, and saw an empty, endless, dark void. For away in the fringes, things shone, entire galaxy, spinning slowly. Radha jumped back in fright. Krishna groaned. The last cargo coach of the train to their left crossed them. The one on their right finally stopped after passing them by. A massive crowd surrounded them. The giant rushed into the crowd that parted. The spectacle man stared at Radha for 5 whole seconds before disappearing among the onlookers. The police in khaki uniforms began appearing, along with men in white bearing stretchers. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Shatabdi, for that captivating narration. I'm sure with the chapter read and the talk from Mr. Tanmay, the audience will have a better understanding of what to expect. Also, I'm sure there will be some burning questions to ask. If you are watching from YouTube, please enter these questions in the chat. I will ask them aloud later in the Q&A session. Also, if you are in Gmeet, I would request you to directly ask these questions in the said Q&A session. We will move on to our next section. That is, our next guest is Mythwala, also known as Vedant Phophale. He is an expert on all things mythology, both Indian and foreign. Mr. Phophale, you may unmute yourself. Also, please address Mr. Tanmay as well as the audience. I'm sure you will have some inquiry with the author.
Hello. I might have to quickly refresh the meeting since my camera isn't turning on. So let me just get back.
Yeah, it's okay.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, finally we are seeing each other, Tanmay. That's great.
Yes.
I would like to begin with an apology and thanks to Mihir, the book club of IISER Bhopal, and Tanmay for very kindly postponing the event to a later date and allow me to heal and join in. But in a sense, it turned out to be quite poetic since we welcomed Ganpati Bappa yesterday, and now we are here talking about Mahabharata, where Ganpati plays an important role of a scribe, where Vyasa asks him to write down the Mahabharata while Vyasa narrates it to him, which is kind of interesting if I may digress a bit. So there are a bunch of manuscripts of Mahabharata across the Indian subcontinent. According to an institute called Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, there are over 12,000 known manuscripts of Mahabharata. And in their study, in their research of compiling all these manuscripts and creating a critical edition of the Mahabharata, they discovered that the episode of Vyasa and Ganesha only appears in a few manuscripts contained to the region of Maharashtra, though the stories are now popular everywhere. So the critical edition of Mahabharata does not include this episode and calls it an interpolation instead. But well, we are here, we are welcoming Ganpati Bappa, and we are talking about Mahabharata. So I'm a mythologist, I am also a writer, but I can't say right now that I'm a reader. I have been in a reading slum for the past few years, and hopefully with Mahabharata 2022, I might be able to get out of it. So I won't brag about the books I read, but I do want to talk about a book that I tried reading recently, which was American Gods by Neil Gaiman. Tanmay mentioned Terry Pratchett, and Neil Gaiman has extensively worked with him on novels like Good Omens, and they've exchanged their feedbacks on each other's novels, be it Terry Pratchett's Discovered series or be it Neil Gaiman's fantasy novels. So why do I want to talk about American Gods right now? Well, first of all, it has gods in its name, and anything related to mythology attracts me. And the story of American Gods is about a protagonist called Shadow Moon. And he goes through 3 different journeys. There is a physical journey, which is across America. There's a mythological or metaphorical journey where he meets a bunch of beings who later turn out to be gods of different regions. And there is a third inwards journey which helps him find his own identity in this chaos. And the third journey, Shadow takes this journey through visions and dreams. Every time Shadow falls asleep or unconscious, he travels or transports himself into a vision where he takes a step forward in knowing his true identity. And I want to talk about that particular scene where in one such vision, Shadow finds himself in a room as big as a city. And when he looks around, he sees there are a bunch of statues, paintings, and scribes all over the room of beings of different kinds. Some are animalistic, some are humanoids. And he looks around, he sees a woman wearing a necklace full of severed heads. But instead of her own head, there are 2 serpents looking at each other, ready to attack. He also sees a man with a ram head who's holding a golden ball. And finally, his eyes fall down to the floor and he sees that there are names burning next to these statues and paintings. So the ram-headed golden ball holding man is called Hershef. The serpent-headed goddess is called a Minoan snake goddess. And there are a bunch of other gods. So he begins wondering that who these beings are. And before he could voice it out, there is a voice in his own head that answers it. The voice says that these are gods, these are lost and forgotten gods, because the people who worship them have stopped worshipping them. The priest who knew their secrets died even before they could pass on the secrets. And thus they are forgotten, and now they are about to die. Because when gods die, they are unmourned and unremembered. And while Gaiman tried to explain the idea, the fact that ideas can be killed as well with time, my mind began wandering somewhere else. I was thinking about a question for a long time, and finally, when I read American Gods, I found the answer to it, and that possible answer brings us all here together. The question that I had was, why do we retell myths? And it's the same thing. We do not want our gods to die. We do not want our stories to die. We want our cultures to thrive, and that's why we retell the myths and we pass on these stories to generations after generations. Tanmay spoke about Amish and Devdutt, who have both done great work in retelling and reimagining the mythology. But it's not a new concept. If some of you might know, Valmiki Ramayana, which is considered to be the original version of Ramayana, has over 300 different versions of it. Some of them you might know as Ramacharita-manas or Adhyatma Ramayana. There is also Ramakeen, which is a drama played in countries like Thailand. And Mahabharata, as I spoke about, there are over 1,200 manuscripts of the Mahabharata alone. And this has been a practice since the ancient times. We have different plays by Bhasa or Kalidasa, where they take these mythological characters and retell their stories or repurpose their stories. Then we come really modern times in 1980s, where S.L. Bhairappa or Shivaji Savant both wrote incredible novels about Mahabharata from different perspectives. Shivaji Savant wrote Mrityunjay, which is the story of Mahabharata through Karna's eyes, and S.L. Bhairappa wrote Parva, which is the story of Mahabharata through Bhima's eyes. And then the new age began. We saw Amish Tripathi rise and bring us the retelling of Shiva trilogy, which is a story from Shiva Purana. And there are multiple authors today, be it Chitra Banerjee Devakaruni, Sai Swarup Iyer, Ashwin Sanghi, Ashok Banker. All of them have made their own retellings through different perspectives, through different ideas. And as Tanmay suggested, and what was the idea behind Mahabharata 2022, is that he wants to bring these age-old stories into a new format with new ideas. And it's possibly the best explanation and the best reason for us to write and rewrite these myths. Because it's high time now that we retell myths with today's lens, with today's ideas. For example, a lot of the gods, or at least in the Puranas, the gods are male dominated. There are very few goddesses, and even if there are, they're made into a different sect and not included in the overall mythology. So we need more feminist point of views in mythologies. We need more LGBTQ representation in mythology. For example, I don't understand why some of the elemental gods like Agni or Vayu cannot be of a different gender, or even a gender for that matter. Their purpose, their identity isn't beholden by their gender. So it's a complete I don't want to say playground, but it sure is an opportunity for us to rewrite the myths and create new understandings out of those. And yeah, that's about it. That's the only book that I've read recently. Which brings me to Tanmay. Hello again.
Hey, hello.
Since we are here in the book club, my first question to you would be: what are you reading currently?
Right. Okay. First, let me thank you for the excellent, kind of overview of the mythology and the stuff that you said. And I'm really happy that you agree also that we need to sort of retell the same stories, but maybe in a different lens, including all the things that you said, including new gender, having gender fluidity, and all the different people have more inclusive kind of mythology and stories and all. So thank you for that. And coming to your question, what book am I reading right now? Well, I am at the moment reading Fear, which is basically the first 3 years of Trump presidency in the United States. I came across this book. It's written by Bob Woodward, who has written books on all the US presidents. Well, when I say all, not right from the beginning, but the recent ones. He has written books on all the president years, exploring how they did their presidency and stuff like that. So I came across that book. I have read Bob Woodward's previous book on Trump, which was his later years and his mismanagement of the COVID situation in US. And so I was very interested in reading the previous book. So I am in nonfiction at the moment, but I do read lots of fiction. Fiction is my real passion, reading or writing or whatever. But yeah, sometimes I do go into nonfiction. Well, with respect to fiction, right now I'm reading Monstrous Regiment by Terry Pratchett. So the Bob Woodward book is more like an audiobook. I listen to it while working, cooking, stuff like that. And physical book, I'm reading Terry Pratchett's Monstrous Regiment. Amazing book. Well, I don't want to spoil it because anything I say will be a spoiler and it will be like not good for people who want to read it. But I would recommend all Terry Pratchett's book, but the Night Watch series and this Monstrous Regiment, which is a standalone book. Yeah, I think amazing because I'm reading it right now and it's just superb.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned Terry Pratchett because that man has written humongous books and novels and created universes. I mean, I barely know Discworld universe by its surface, but I would love to dive in someday and truly get into all of it. And you yourself are very much like Terry Pratchett because you have written over 11 manuscripts, if I'm not wrong, if I got it correct.
Yes.
So, how is your writing process? I mean, you've written 11 manuscripts. You've published a book now.
Yes.
How was the experience? How is it different from writing manuscripts and getting it to publish? I'm sure there are a bunch of people here who are interested because I am an aspiring author myself. I'm in a process of writing some story. I'm not sure how I'm going to present it yet, but yeah, I would love to know your thoughts on that.
It's a writing process is always a tough question for me because usually what happens is I have kind of a very rough idea in my mind. So first thing, I mostly write mysteries. In fact, even Mahabharata 22 is basically a mystery novel. So, when you are writing a mystery novel, it's you need a few suspects. That is one. You need to know who the murderer is, because mostly murder mysteries. And then you need to know how you will mislead the readers so that they never discover who the murderer is before the end chapter. And as I had mentioned, Agatha Christie was the master of this. It was very, very difficult to guess who the culprit is in her books. So I think what I do is like literally dream up impossible scenarios of murder, impossible ways of doing it, and then sort of bring it down to a more believable level. And then once I know, okay, this is the crime that is going to happen, this is how it is going to happen, this is the person who is going to do it, then it's all about confusing the readers with all other characters and plots and stuff. So yeah, so in this book, it's a mystery where Abhimanyu kills himself. Then there is the question of why, who, did he do it himself? Was somebody else involved? If somebody influenced him? So it's a murder mystery. And then there is all the different things. The characters of Mahabharata are involved. Their personal stories are involved. So here, while I was actually trying to create this as a distraction for the readers to go into a journey to find the mystery, but it sort of took over me and it became more of a Mahabharata novel than a mystery novel. So now it's more Mahabharata and part of it is mystery. So I would say, I think that is, I can't be any more specific because I think that's how it just, I just sit down, write one chapter every day and then keep going from there, because I like to not know what I am going to write, because if I know, it becomes very boring. Oh, I have to write this. So yeah, I think that's the process.
Very, very interesting. I mean, so you're basically saying that to write a mystery, you have to solve the mystery first and then build it up. It's
Yes.
Fascinating. Well, you're bowling me out here because I came here prepared with a bunch of questions, and you've answered almost all of them. And with that, my next question was about to be, how was the experience of turning Mahabharata into mystery, or how the concept came to you? Because Mahabharata is known to most of the people, at least we know the gist of it. So how do you introduce mystery into it?
Right. So it happened because I was writing some books, but I was sending it out and none of them got any interest from either literary agents or from publishers. So I was in a fix. What can I write that will be interesting to people? And then I was reading some advice on what can be done, and one of the advice that stuck with me from a blog was, you have to be really, really, really innovative, but be very, very non-innovative at the same time, which was a bit confusing, but that person had an explanation. It's like you cannot write something happening in like nobody has ever read before, because then nobody will pick it up. It has to be something that has written many, many times. People are familiar with it. People know about it. People know they will enjoy it. So that way it cannot be innovative at all. But at the same time, you cannot just write the same thing again. So having the base non-innovative, you have to be very innovative, which is you have to take something which is very well known, give it a twist, and then present it in a different manner. And so I was wondering, what can I do? And Mahabharata has always been my favorite story novel, or whatever you want to call it. It's an epic. For me, it's like a series of stories which is woven together in a fantastic manner. And I was thinking, okay, everybody loves Mahabharata. Well, I love it, so I'm pretty sure many, many people love it. And so can I write something with Mahabharata? But then, as you said, so many people have so many amazing versions of Mahabharata, have written from different point of views, from Karna's, Bhishma's, from a female perspective. I think the
Chitra Banerjee.
Chitra Banerjee's book is from the perspective of Draupadi, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, true. So I was like, okay, that has been explored too. So what can I do? And well, it came to me, well, I can do one thing, which is, well, nobody has, to my best of my knowledge, has written the Mahabharata happening at the particular moment. I'm not entirely correct in that, because there is a Bollywood movie which was a few years back, I mean, in mid 90s or something, which was basically Mahabharat, which was basically two big rich families fighting against each other. But it had different characters. I mean, it took the concept from Mahabharat, but it had different characters. And I was like, okay, but do I need to have different characters? Why not have the characters from Mahabharat itself interacting and going along? So I was like, okay, so that's a new concept. We'll have Mahabharat in Mumbai. No superpowers, nothing. Everybody is common person. So they have to struggle the way we are struggling at this present. And then question came, what will be the plot? And I always love mysteries, and all my books are mysteries. So I was like, okay, so let's write, the plot will be a mystery plot, but it will be lots of things happening which are connected to the mystery. So the mystery was just the basic thread connecting the whole plot and the whole book, and everything happening around it which are pertinent to that. And so that's how this book happened.
That is great. I mean, so I'm in a process of writing this story, and one of the point was that why do I need to use different characters or different names for that matter? Why can't I just write about the people or the gods involved? And that got me to a point where I'm writing stories in a fictional world, the more mythological world. I'm not basing it in a real world, so I never had a problem of just going on with the fantasy, because anything can happen there. But you are limited to human concepts, and because of that, the next question about that is, so I read the blurb, and we see the rivalry between Kauravas and Pandavas, but you're bringing in a third side of Radha and Krishna investigating, which is the best unique point about your retelling, because I don't believe anyone has done that before. So how was that idea that struck you, or how was that when it came to execution? Because we famously know that Krishna is open supporter of Pandavas. So to make him a third side, make him into a third perspective, how did that happen? And a follow-up question on that, before you might answer about it. Radha, who's absent from Mahabharat, like completely, mention of Radha comes in the later texts and poems, but she's nowhere to be seen in Mahabharata. How did you bring her into the story, and was it challenging to fit her in a story where she doesn't belong, in a sense?
Right. So yes, the third side. Yeah. I think the third side is very important to me, because I wanted to introduce the pressure of the public and the government and the law and the system that we live in. You cannot just do whatever you want. You will face backlash. At this present situation, at the present times, just being successful is not enough. You have to be public oriented. You have to be liked by the people. You have to follow the will of the public. So even, not just politicians, but even big industrialists and actors and everybody, they have social media. They try to interact with the public. They try to have the public opinion favorable. And so that's what I wanted to bring in here. The public side, the third side, is people cannot just do whatever they want. There are pressures which will stop them from just producing chaos all over the world, all over the city, or wherever the thing is. And that was the reason for bringing the third side. And yes, the introduction of Radha, the first reason I wanted Radha was because I wanted a female protagonist. I really wanted a female protagonist. There are lots of books which have female protagonists, but I think still it is less. And I wanted a female protagonist-led book. So she is the main and only protagonist. All others are side characters. It's not like she is co-protagonist or equal protagonist, or no. She is the protagonist. There is nobody else. She is the main character, apart from the villains or kind of thing. Now, the introduction of Radha had another important thing. You see, it's very difficult to, if a character who is from either Pandavas and Kauravas, if that person is the lead, there is no need for him to know about the Pandavas and Kauravas. He is already supposed to know it. So, if he already knows it, how will the reader come to know about what's happening? Because this is rather not a retelling but a reimagination, where the plots are different, the stories are slightly different. So to introduce the readers to all this, the new story, the new plot line, there had to be somebody who is neither from the Pandava or the Kaurava camp, who is coming in fresh, who knows nothing about all these underlying problems, and who has his own problems, who has her own problems. And that's how Radha was, basically Radha represents me and us, all of us. She and we are looking at what's happening with the Pandavas and the Kauravas, and we are having the, the whole plot or the whole story unfolding in front of us. It is happening right in front of us. And so I think that those are the reasons why introduction of Radha was, I won't say difficult, but necessary. It actually helped push the plot forward. It actually helped hold the story together. Instead of making it difficult, it was making it much easier and flow more smoothly. So I think introduction of Radha was something that holds the whole story together.
That's fascinating. I mean, basically you're making a fish out of the water story with Radha, who knows nothing about these people, and as you explained her character, she practically hates them.
Yes.
So that brings up a new dynamic to the relationships as well. So you spoke about villains.
Yes, sorry. I have a question for you, because you are the expert in this field. And since you are asking about, this is a character who is out of this Mahabharata story. But I'm pretty sure there are many characters in Mahabharata which we don't know about, who are not so well known but still interesting. Could you just give one or two examples?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, there are.
There must be hundreds. Yeah, but
I mean, the whole story of Mahabharata begins with Janmejaya performing the Sarpasatra, which is a yajna to kill the Nagas, because the snakes, one of the snake bit his father Parikshit and killed him. And the story of Mahabharata begins in the yajna, where Janmejaya curiously asks about his ancestor, who were my ancestors, how whatever that happened. So the stories are told to him by Vaishampayana, a disciple of Vyasa himself, and that's how the story moves forward. Apologies, am I stuck?
No.
All right, perfect. I'll go on. Thank you. So yeah, those are the stories. I mean, the beginning stories, people might not know about them. There are a bunch of stories which are related to. So famously, scholars believe that the expansion of Mahabharata, as we know, Mahabharata went through 3 stages. The first was called Jaya, which was some 800 verses long. Then it was called Bharata, which was 24,000 verses long. And the third one, as we know it, is Mahabharata, which is over 1 lakh verses. And so the expansion of these versions are done by the rishis of the Bhrigu clan, is what the scholars believe. So a lot of the stories are about these rishis, be it Bhrigu, be it Jamadagni, be it his son Parashurama. The story, if I'm not sure if you know about it, but the thing that we call Chavanprash comes from a rishi called Chavana who made it out of the jari booties, and we famously call it by his name. There are these stories, and there's one particular episode that I enjoy the most, and it's a rather unknown episode, I would say. We know it with parts, like by parts, but it's the story of Pandavas living in disguise in the Matsya kingdom. So the Pandavas enter a little, if I may, I might just describe the story in a small time. So Matsya kingdom is ruled by Virata, and his commander is Kichaka. And after the 12 years of Vanavasa, Pandavas decide to live in the Matsya kingdom because they are allies to the Pandavas. And but Matsya kingdom have their own enemies in a neighboring kingdom called Trigartha. But because Kichaka was such an admiring or fantastic commander, he kept them at bay. And because of that, Matsya kingdom was safe. Enter Pandavas, they get jobs in the palace of Virata. And when the queen of Virata sees Draupadi, she gets jealous and she gets insecure that this beautiful lady, even though a dasi, might steal my husband. So she tries to send her to Kichaka, who was unmarried. But Draupadi had no clue about this. And when she goes to Kichaka, Kichaka makes advances at her, and she insults him and leaves. And the both sides now begin planning. The queen and Kichaka begin planning taking Draupadi by force, while Draupadi and Bhima planning on killing Kichaka. So the next time the queen sends her to Kichaka, Draupadi sends Bhima instead of her, who dresses up as her Draupadi and takes her place. And Kichaka is killed by Bhima. But this brings another catastrophe to the Matsya kingdom, because the famous commander is now dead. And this news spreads like fire. So the spies of Kauravas, who are actively seeking Pandavas and trying to get them to go back to the forest again, mention this news to the Kauravas. And Trigarthas also see it as a challenge or open invitation to take the Matsya kingdom. And by joining the forces, the Kauravas and Trigarthas attack the Matsya kingdom, where a newly anointed commander, Uttara, the son of Virata, has to fight, but he gets afraid, and then Arjuna has to take his place, and he famously defeats all the Kauravas, and by the virtue of call it a plot armor or call it an ease in writing, their period of living in disguise is exactly over on that same day. So they are very safely done with their punishment, and they go back to the kingdom. So this is one of the stories that I think is interesting, because it continuously has a conflict and resolution. So as a writer, it feels very interesting to read, but it's not very known in the public eye, for that matter.
Right.
So yeah, these are some of the stories, and there are multiple stories. If you get into reading the Mahabharata, you will know stories, and there are many small throwaway references which give you names of places or the etymologies of things. So yeah, there are multiple stories. I would highly suggest reading Mahabharata, whichever version you can find. And that brings me to the next question that I was going to ask. You spoke about the villains in this novel. So we know Mahabharata has villains in the form of Kauravas.
Yes.
But are Kauravas villains in Mahabharata 2022? Is there a good versus bad concept where Pandavas are the good ones who are supposed to win and Kauravas are the bad ones who are supposed to lose? Is there a concept like that?
No. In my book, at least, the Kauravas are not the villains. They are just businessmen. Like the Pandavas, they are, both Pandavas and Kauravas are businessmen. They are out to outwit each other in business, and they are going to go to whatever lengths. It's for Arjun, it is personal. For Duryodhan, it is not personal. It is purely business. For business, he is going to put aside everything. But Duryodhan is not a villain here. He is just another businessman doing what any other business. So he doesn't do anything more evil than what Arjun does or what Bhim does. He does the same tactics, same thing. So I don't think I cannot classify any of the Kauravas as villains in this book. But there is a fight between good and evil. And that fight is between the same person or within the same person. So each character in this book exhibits a good side and a bad side. And it's more about, and it's not like in the end, their good side wins and they are able to vanquish their bad side. No, it just keeps like a seesaw. Sometimes they show their good character, sometimes they show their bad character, and each action has a consequence. So anything that one does, whether it's for a good reason or a bad reason, by a good character or a bad character within the self, it has consequences. So it's more of an exploration of, how nothing can be branded as good or bad. It just keeps changing all the time in all the people. And that is pretty much reflected, I think, in this book, because I think the reader who goes without previous concept and just takes it as a standalone book, I don't think they will classify anybody as hero or anybody as villain, except Radha. She is clearly the hero. She is the, and to some extent, Krishna too. He is also the hero. They are the leads. But anybody else, and even these two characters have their ups and downs and good and bad, and a lot of struggle on what is good and what is bad, what they are doing is good or they are doing is bad. So yeah, it's a lot of complications. With this regard, I wanted to ask you, like now that you asked about who is the villain and who is the hero. Well, as you said, in Mahabharata, the Kauravas are clearly the villains, but are there any characters with whom we have misconceptions about, whom we think are, villains but are not really villains, or we think are heroes but not really heroes, sort of?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you look at the original Mahabharata, Vyasa's Mahabharata, at the core of it, it's a very political story. And as we might have seen in history also, in just current affairs, that politics knows no morals. And because of that, at least for that matter, in the period of war, both Pandavas and Kauravas do some questionable things. And so nobody is completely black and white. They're all the shades of gray. And while even though Vyasa portrays Arjuna as the clear hero, all of them have their own problems, all of them have their own internal battles, be it Bhima and his anger problems, which are then represented through his battles and through his fighting Duryodhana, or be it Yudhishthira and his stubbornness for truth, stubbornness for administration, for that matter, which causes him a lot of pain later on. Even the Kauravas, the elderly Kauravas, are all conflicted in their own mind. Bhishma, who's the grandsire of all, doesn't want a war to happen at all. He just can't say anything because of the oath that he's taken and because of the promise that he's given his stepmother that he would not interfere in the rules or in the games of thrones, which is why he doesn't side with Pandavas, but has to side with the throne instead of even Kauravas for that matter. So if Bhishma were to be alive at the end of the war, he would have happily counseled Pandavas as they progressed in their kingdom. And because he was so conflicted, the scholars or the people who study Mahabharata believe that the first 10 days of the war was a phony war, because there is not a single major character that dies in those 10 days. There are many smaller characters, many soldiers that die, but Bhishma commandeers the army in a way that stops the bloodshed to the insignificant ones, at least. Dronacharya, who so there was an interesting question on Quora some years ago, why Drishtadyumna was made the commander of the Pandava army and not Arjun if he was the skilled warrior. And because Mahabharata is such a juxtaposition of characters, you always have someone versus someone, be it Arjuna versus Karna, Bhima versus Duryodhana, Pandu versus Dhritarashtra for that matter. And because of that, we have Drishtadyumna commandeering the army of Pandavas, while Drona is commandeering the army of Kauravas. So he was also conflicted in that matter, that he was fighting his own students. And he did not want that, but he had no choice. And there is an instance in the war where Dronacharya is pulling his punches. And Duryodhana sees that, Duryodhana notices that, and he shames him that if you're fighting for us, if you are the commander of the entire Kuru army, you can't pull your punches. You have to go on and fight like the warrior that you are, not the teacher that you are. And that gets the Dronacharya a lot angry. And that's the day, the 14th day, where he fights for the entire day, even after the sunset. So we know these characters just by the storyline that we know since childhood. But as you read the Mahabharata, you understand the intricacies, and you find that, okay, so there are certain things that were foreshadowed in the previous chapter or in the previous episode, but because they did not pertain to the main storyline, they were ignored by the mass population. And now we believe that some things were questionable or some things were wrong even by the Pandavas. So all of them have their own justifications in the novel. That's what I believe.
Okay.
Well, talking about characters,
yes,
what were some of the characters that you had fun while writing? I mean, let it be. Well, I'm not sure what your answer is going to be, but Radha, since she's the obvious protagonist,
yes,
I would like to exclude her. But other than that, who else was fun to write?
I think Krishna was fun to write because I took some liberties. Well, this is a completely pure thriller with no fantasy elements at all. But I did take a very slight liberty of shifting into slight fantasy, very, very, very light. But yeah, Krishna does exhibit some out of the world characteristics, like in the chapter which was read, when she tries to give her the CPR, Krishna CPR opens his mouth, he sees like a vast emptiness and universe. So that is something that I thought, yeah, it's okay. Sometimes it's fine to introduce. And there is another place where these are presented as Radha's possibly imagination or possibly true, because it's always Radha who sees these things, never anybody else. So there's another scene where Krishna is very, very angry. He's standing in front of a swamp. He's had a phone call which made him very much disturbed. And suddenly Radha sees the whole sky glow red and snakes come out of the swamp and seven-headed snakes, and things look very, very critical. And then suddenly it all disappears when Krishna smiles. So there are slight, so plus Krishna is also sort of a person who brings lightness to the scene. It's all very serious, but he does something or says something that, makes people lighten it up, but fun and campy kind of thing, not taking anything too seriously, that kind of thing. So that Krishna was one character, and the other was Duryodhan. I wanted Duryodhan to be a very, very, very complex character. And so Duryodhan keeps going from extreme villain to suddenly a very good guy, to extreme ruthlessness, to a very caring person. He just goes up and down, and it is a roller coaster, but it is supposed to show that no person is completely evil to the core or very good or anything. It's just all the phases are present in one single person. It's just the situation that brings out either the bad or the good or anything. So I wanted to write Duryodhan to be showing all the different characteristics. And so, yeah, I think it was a fun, especially him clashing with Radha. These are not real fights, but more of a tactical and intellectual type of hate, and how to outwit each other. So he does something to harm her indirectly, and she does something to harm him indirectly, and they do keep doing this throughout the book. So that was another character. And I think Eklavya was also a character which was fun, because like Duryodhan and Radha always in conflict in indirect way, Eklavya and Radha are in conflict in a direct way, because Eklavya keeps chasing Radha and Radha has to keep outwitting him. And Eklavya is a brilliant, brilliant detective. So it is not easy. So it takes both Radha and Krishna work together to outwit Eklavya. He is that good. So yeah, so these are the characters which was fun to write.
Fantastic. Thankfully, I have a copy of your book, and I read the first chapter. I'm sorry, as I said, I'm in a reading slump. I'm going to take a little bit of time. But I read the first chapter, and I love how you begin with the story of Abhimanyu, and he is in a crowded club, very much like inside the Chakravyuha. And as he goes to meet Lakshman, the Duryodhana's son,
Yes.
There are beats of visions that he sees of the people, which is very interesting and a great parallel from the Chakravyuha battle that we see in the Mahabharata. And the 11th chapter that we read also has Krishna showing her the Vishwarupa inside his mouth.
Yes.
So yeah, I look forward to reading all of that. So this is my last question to you.
Yes.
So what's next for you? What would there be a sequel to Mahabharata 2022? Would you, other than the techno thriller novel, would you write another mytho fiction? What would be your process going forward? And before you answer that, I would like to ask Mihir to just put the link of the book. If I'm not wrong, the book is released now.
Yes.
And people can buy the book. So if Mihir can please put the link in the chat where people can buy the book, it would be fantastic. And yeah, over to you, Tanmoy.
Thank you for reminding me. Yes, the book is released. While I was talking with the IISER book club, it was still under some working thing, but now it is released and it is available for purchase. With regard to the question about what's next, well, I do want to write a sequel for Mahabharata 2022. The book doesn't end in this. The mystery is solved. So it's a complete standalone book. So it's not like a cliffhanger or something you have to read the next book to get a finale or a finishing for this book. No, this is a complete book. Everything is finished, but it leads to a new thing. So at the end, it does have the potential for next. So with regard to the sequel, so I do have a rough idea of what will it be about specifically now that the Pandavas and Kauravas are clashing in this book, but you cannot have the same villain again and again and again, villain, hero, whatever you want to call it. I don't want to use the word villain, but this is just for convenience. And so I have some new ideas about who can be the next antagonist and protagonist and antagonist and how it will be. But it's a very rough thing at the moment. There is not even a plot, it's just an idea. So I would like to write. At the moment, I would, in the meantime, I would try to put some of the books which are ready, sort of, out. You have already said about the techno thriller. That is there. There's one more young adult mystery, which is a very simple mystery. Nothing, big or anything, because I like something which is very small, contained in a, very small adventure kind of thing. What you see in a one episode of a detective series or something. So that kind of book I would like to get it out. And there is another one which is I was working in parallel with this. So this is Mahabharata happening in Mumbai, and I was thinking, can anything else? So I was thinking, what else, which is very Indian, which is what we are all familiar with. What else can happen in Mumbai? So Mahabharata happening in Mumbai is one. I thought, okay, we all have superstitions. Okay, even I have some superstitions which I believe in, and I was like, there was a big debate which happened. Which, are superstitions real? Are they not real? Should you believe it? Like, I wear rings, and question is like, why do you wear rings? You are a scientist. You shouldn't believe. And I'm like, no, this doesn't mean that I have to disregard every belief just because I'm a scientist. And so that was the thing. And I was thinking, okay, that is a very, very familiar thing. We are all familiar with it. Can I do something with that in Mumbai? So I came up with an idea which is not fully thought through, but it's alternate universe. It's Mumbai, how we know it, but the only difference is that all superstitions are true in this world, and anything and every superstition is true. So if a black cat crosses you, you are going to be in trouble. And if you don't hang that, Nimbu and Mirchi thing outside your house, you are going to get cursed. That's for sure. So it's a world where anything can happen. It's very, fluctuating. Things depend on luck. Your capability has no meaning. If you are lucky, you will go ahead in life. If you are unlucky, no matter how capable you are, you will never go ahead in life. And things is, you can do some superstitious black magic, white magic, whatever, to improve your luck or whatever. So this is the setting, and there is this girl who is cursed, who wakes up one morning and finds that the ceiling fan suddenly falls down, tries to decapitate her, the mirror is broken, which is a very bad sign, and she is, and the story is like, who cursed her and her struggle to find out in a world which is completely crazy. So yeah, that's another concept which I'm working on. So I would like to write that too. Depends if the plot does come to my mind.
Please, I hope you do. It sounds very interesting, very fascinating. Again, very Terry Pratchett-y, if I may.
Yes, exactly. He is my inspiration.
Very, very. I look forward to it. And that's about it, I guess.
Yep.
Thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you,
Mihir, and thank you, Himadri. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you everyone for giving us this chance. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to you too. And I think it was a very riveting conversation. We have some questions that were sent to us before the event began. So we are running through a time crunch, so you may answer it briefly.
Yep.
Yeah, these questions are slightly doctored without changing the intent behind the question. Yeah. So moving to the first question. Just a second. It's from Himanshu R to both of you. How to find the accurate etymology of common Sanskrit words used in these literary works? Often these words are important to the story, but there can be a lot of fake etymologies going around. So what do you have to say about it?
Well, you check the dictionaries. There are many online dictionaries available, which are Sanskrit dictionaries, and most of them have etymologies. And if possible, I'm sure there are many Sanskrit professors who are ready to help people. I take help from my own Sanskrit professor in regards to etymologies, but for your individual research, I would suggest online dictionaries. I would suggest Update Dictionary, which is available. You can just Google and you'll find the dictionary.
Yeah, so next question is from Mihir to Mr. Tanmay. What advice would you have for someone willing to do both, finding employment in research and finding success in creative writing?
Right. So I would always say first concentrate on your research career. Book writing doesn't pay. It takes like 10 years, 12 years. If you really ever are going to make money, it will be after 10 years. Best to have a career on the side. Now, it depends on what career situation. If you are in your postgraduate, it's best to talk to all your professors as to what kind of, where we can do PhD. And of course, in India, if you're looking in India, it's very critical that you have to clear the entrance exams, which are tough, but you can do it. It's possible. Try twice. In a master's degree, you can get 2 times and 3 times. So just try 2-3 times. The first time you might just need to, understand what the exam is about. I took it twice. First time I didn't succeed. So that's why I'm saying first time I was like, oh, what's happening? I just don't understand. The time is going up. So yeah. In the second time, I was more calm, more prepared. I also had the advantage that I already had a PhD position with a funded scholarship. So that made the CSR exam not really critical for me. I think because there was no pressure, I could get through. But I'm saying it's possible. You can get through that. And that's the way to join PhD in India. In abroad, the best thing is to just write to lots of scientists, in Europe, US, wherever you want to go. And they are very good. They will always reply back. If they are not too busy, don't write to the scientists who are like Nobel Prize winners or, big medal winners. Just start with a small one and they will reply. So if you're trying for a PhD in a foreign country, write to the scientist. In India, you have to clear the entrance exams. That's my advice. And yeah, just one sentence which I want to add with respect to creative writing. As I have said in my presentation, you just have to keep writing and one day it will click. And that's it.
Yeah, thank you. And next question is for Mr. Vedant. What do you think the so-called Divyastras actually were? Like, could society at that time really be that technologically developed?
So yeah, that's a topic of hot debate, if I may. But as Tanmay said in his introduction, we have to look forward. The problem today we face is that we look at the ancient texts or ancient descriptions with the lens of today's technology. While we may give them a benefit of doubt, there is a rather lack of evidence when it comes to finding these Divyastras, as you may. So I believe they are the pioneers which got us the hydrogen bomb, that got us the atomic bomb. Whatever the current weaponry we have today is rather inspired by the ancient descriptions than it being the opposite. So, in my opinion, I believe they are fantastical descriptions, but I'm always open to new research, and if there is enough evidence for us to believe that things like this were available and existed in that time period, why not? Why not?
Yeah, next question is from Onkar again to both of you. In your opinion, what are the some obvious distortions between what may have happened then and what we are told now for any kind of mythology?
I think Vedant should answer this.
Well, there's enough as you go on studying the myths, you understand through language, through different cultural aspects present in the text. We realize that how different additions or interpolations were made into the story. For example, I famously give out is that the Uttara Ramayana of Valmiki Ramayana, which is the 7th book in the series, is an interpolated Ramayana because the characters behave extremely opposite to the way they are in the main story of Ramayana. Rama is very dismissive. He kills people without a certain reason just because his praja complains it to him. There are instances, I mean, we all know how he sent Sita to the Valmiki ashram just because he heard people gossiping about her chastity. And so these are very contradictory characteristics in the Ramayana, which is very easy to identify, which is how the scholars identify the 7th book to be an interpolation, which means that it was added later into the Ramayana books. So yeah, these are some of the distortions, interpolations. I wouldn't say distortions because there have been many versions of these stories. So we don't truly know which one's the true version. If we date these texts, then maybe we'll have a clearer understanding. But I would just call them versions more than distortions. But as you understand the storyline, even if you realize how the story is changing and it doesn't fit the characters, it doesn't fit the plot, then you will understand that these are some of the distortions or the interpolations that were added into the text.
Next question is asked by Sayali. How to initiate learning about Indian mythology from zero?
So I always suggest Wikipedia as your first resource. I know Wikipedia is not that trustworthy when it comes to things, but it's a starting point. If you don't know anything about it, I mean, it'll be hard for people to not know about mythology living in India, because we have mythology surrounding us through various means. I mean, if you just think about it, there are over 4 Ramayana projects coming in the film industry. So you will have some sort of idea of the story anyhow. So just start from Wikipedia. Learn about the things. So Wikipedia is a great summary for you to truly begin your research if you want to do it. So you begin with the text in Wikipedia, and then you actually read the source text. Or unless if you want to read the stories for the fun of it, you can check out different authors who are retelling the myths, who are writing in the non-fiction genre. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, the next question is by Mihir to both of you. Myth-derived works often face a lot of resistance from zealots or orthodox believers of various sects of our society. So, do you have an idea as to how a writer can walk this tightrope without falling to the dark abyss?
Tanmoy, why don't you take this one?
Well, yeah, it's difficult because it's always difficult to predict what people will be angry about, what will make people angry. But I think as long as you are respectful in your work, as long as you respect the characters, do not unnecessarily belittle anybody or try to put anybody or show somebody in a bad light, I think it will be okay. Because what is important is your intent, the way you have presented the characters. Have you tried to show somebody in a bad light, which might be a problem, unless there is a particular reason you are doing it. So yeah, I think whenever, and there have been so many mythology retellings, all of them different interpretations. I think people are more open to these kind of things, unless and until you like really come out and say something that is really, really vile, or really something which is very disrespectful. I doubt there will be too much problems with these stories. You are reinterpreting, reimagining, basically telling the same thing but in a different way, so it should be okay.
To add on to that, again, just don't be disrespectful to the characters. And the second part is the opposition comes from the lack of awareness. So if you have a source to go back to, if you know that the character that you have described or the plot that you've written has some basis in the source books, you should rather be unafraid of writing it, because you always have a reference to go back to, and it would be rather a learning experience than some opposition.
Yeah. Now, next question is from Nitish to Mr. Tanmay.
Yes.
Does the question for perfection harm you sometimes, for example, by delaying the publishing of the book, or a feeling of dissatisfaction? Or is it just another human tendency which is normal even in the field of writing?
Okay, so I would answer this in a different way. I look at books as commercial ventures. The reason why I wrote the book is not really for the satisfaction of being able to say I'm a writer, but it's a commercial venture. This is more of a commercial or business kind of thing. If I want to become a full-time writer, I cannot be a starving one. There are people who can do that. I am not the right person to do that kind of thing. I have to have income from this. So whenever I am writing, the perfection is based on business decision. Since I am a first-time writer, it is always advisable to show that you are a serious writer by getting a traditional publisher publish your book, because that shows you are capable. You have the possibility or the capability to publish with traditional publishers. It meets the standards of publication, so on and so forth. Now, once you have published your first book and it has shown some success, you can always go for self-publishing. And this is where it comes, whether perfection comes, when do you decide? If you are publishing with a traditional publisher, yeah, you have to be pretty perfect. You have to be sure, and then it will still be rejected by many. But when you are self-publishing, the question of perfection doesn't come. Many people have got commercial success without trying too much perfection in language or story or plot, and I don't disagree with them. Language is a tool. It doesn't have to be excellent or flowery or anything, as long as conveys the story to you. Again, the story doesn't have to be groundbreaking or earth-shattering. It is a story which makes somebody happy, makes somebody feel either happy, sad, adventurous, mysterious, horror, whatever. So perfection, I would say, will come when you are trying for traditional publishers. But if you have established yourself, I would say go ahead with what you think is right. There will be an audience for that. Not every book that is polished needs to have an audience. There can be an audience for your book, the way you have written, the way you want to share the story. So yes, go ahead with it. But remember, what you are trying. If it is a business venture, you have to try it in a different way because you have to earn money. If it is a satisfaction of your work, you might go for the most perfect novel before you publish. So I can, if you have more questions regarding this, please email me and I will talk to you about, how more about this kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. The last question is from Nayanika to both of you. How do you think mythology should be interpreted in today's days and age? We increasingly find people quoting some angles of the past age to bolster their present case. Do you think this approach does justice to the given text?
Vedant?
At the core of it, it doesn't. I mean, as Tanmoy mentioned, there are multiple people trying to give you financial advice and marketing advice through mythological texts. But do they truly speak about those things? No, they don't. So mythology is more about the culture inherently. It's about the people, and when you interpret it, when you interpret the characters, that's when you get which is eternal something. The quality of human life is eternal, and that's what you get from interpreting mythology. And there are a bunch of stories that you can understand to realize what the thought process of these ancient people were. Would I consider scientific advancement as mythology? No. There are different books written by scientists of the ancient times who have done marvelous work. They have calculated the circumference of the Earth. They have calculated the distance between the sun and the Earth, and this is a legit accomplishment for people of the ancient India. But they are not mythology. They just use the mythological terms, which is sometimes confused. And mythology uses these references in its text, but it doesn't truly give you a scientific definitions of things. So when people say that, the Vedas have hidden knowledge in them, they don't. They have interpretations. They have descriptive, flowery language, which is rather understanding of the human thought process. But it doesn't give you a formula. It doesn't spit out E equals MC square by just jumbling up one verse with the other. So you're reading mythology. You should be reading mythology today to understand history, to understand culture, because so much of the practices that we practice, so much of the language that we speak, the various words and sentences and the grammatical structure comes from mythology. The name of our country, Bharata, has two stories behind it. One is that it was named after the son of Dushyanta and Shakuntala, whose name was Bharat, and because it was his country, it was named Bharata. And there is an older etymology where there was a tribe of Bharatas in the Rig Veda, and because they conquered this region, the region got the name Bharata. So you learn mythology to understand how we came to be, and that's the purpose of mythology is the understanding of human nature, the understanding of human and universal origin, and understanding of let's say afterlife or the process of death.
Yes. Since we are running out of time, there is one question from YT, and we'll be taking one question from the Gmeet too. If you have, you may unmute or put it in the chat box. For now, the YT question will be asked by Mihir. Mihir, please go ahead.
Yeah, the question from YouTube is from Shatabdi. The genre of mythopia is a genre which can raise many controversies if not handled properly. How do you balance the equation of the modern world with the characters from the past which people idolize and pray. Like how will they look at it because they are praying to that god, and then you have written something about that god? How does that happen?
Right. So here there are two things. The first thing is you are talking about Krishna. Krishna is a beloved god, and I and everybody in the country respects, and not just in the country, all over the world there are followers of Krishna. But you have to remember that Krishna is also a character in Mahabharata, and Vedant had said that something that has happened and you are writing it. I am not writing anything that is new. In Mahabharata, the original Mahabharata, Lord Krishna is a character. He is a person who is helping the Pandavas, he is friendly with the Kauravas. He has knowledge of everything that is happening. So he is part of that epic. And if I do not write him in my reinterpretation or reimagination, it will not be right, because he is a big part of Mahabharata. So, that's the thing. I cannot, removing him is a bigger insult, because he is such a big part. I mean, if you read Mahabharata, he is present almost everywhere. He is present at all the major parts of Mahabharata, the war, the time Draupadi was humiliated in the beginning, and he has his own stories. So true. But as I have said again before, as long as you write, Vedant has said, as long as you write something that is already there, and second, as long as you are very respectful and do not, do anything that hurts sentiments, I think it is totally fine to rewrite something that is already written.
Yes, thank you. And now we open the floor for audience to ask their questions. If you have, you may raise your hand and I will ask you to unmute. Yeah, Sohan Nag, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for being here, and it's a very very good afternoon that I had spent here for last 1.5 hours or so, and thank you to Tanmoy Bhattacharjee and Vedant, both of you. And yeah, so I'm a member. I'm the senior most member in the book club. So right now, when Vedant is talking about the Ganesha, right? Like the Ganesh Chaturthi has passed in yesterday, and he's talking about Ganesha. I somehow sometime we see the interpretations of Ganesha in, I guess, in Japanese culture, as well as in I guess in Bauddhic culture as well, right? So the my question will be how to encapsulate all of those things in one place, and can we do that, and can we say that these are the variations of one god, these are the other variations of other god, and say and take a a juxtaposition of it
So this is a humongous project even to imagine, and I do want to challenge myself to do something like this in the future. I hopefully will. I am in the process of compiling and comparing the different myths, or the different versions of the myths that we see around our own subcontinent or different cultures. As you know, like Ganesha, there are multiple gods who have traveled from our region to the different countries. For example, the Greeks were worshipping Mithra, who's the sun in our mythology. Because of the Buddhism traveling across the subcontinent and to the southeast countries, there are versions of Ramayana, there are versions of Ganesha's myths. There are, I believe, Japanese mythology has almost all the gods with different names. There is Saraswati, there is Brahma, there is Ganesha, there is Shiva. All of these gods are present in Japanese mythology because it's a compilation, culmination of multiple mythologies, which is the Shinto Japanese mythology, the Hindu mythology, and the Buddhic mythology. So again, it's a huge task. I hope scholars come together, keeping aside their differences, and work over something like this, something of sorts of a encyclopedia, to say the least. And I hope that happens. I am working actively about it. Hopefully, you'll hear something from me soon.
Yeah, like because like I really wanted to know all those things. Like it will be great to see an encyclopedia of all those things, like encyclopedia of the mythology itself, like the god and goddesses itself. So I guess it's
Definitely.
a
Definitely. So I begun with a very small step on Instagram. I have a page called House of Myths. If you're interested in world mythology, I would ask you to follow the page. I'll keep updating on it. As soon as I find some trivia, I keep on updating on the profile. So you're very welcome to follow it. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and message, DM us on that page. We have my tagline for that page is that uniting cultures and worlds through educating and entertaining through mythology. So yeah, hopefully I am able to do that.
Yeah, if there are some more questions, we can take one or two. You may go ahead and raise your hands. I guess there's not any. So we'll be wrapping it up. Thank you for your time and everybody, your attendance. We will appreciate your feedback for this event and more. Tell us on our Instagram. Our ID is IISER Bhopal Book Club. Also, you may take a screenshot and tell us about what you think or feel about it. And thank you to our guests, Mr. Tanmoy Bhattacharjee and Mr. Vedant Phophale, for your time. And also, thank you for Fine Arts Literary Council for helping us to organize this event, and also the Student Affairs for their permission, and also to us, the book club, for hosting this, and also Satabdian for your amazing book reading. Yeah, and also to everyone who asked their questions. Thank you.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you
Yeah.
for having us here. Yeah.
It is nice having you.
A small announcement before this ends.